Welcome to the Feeding Our Young podcast. Have you ever heard the phrase, nurses eat their young? Feeding Our Young is more than a podcast. It's a movement. It's a desire to see new nurses of all ages be supported and uplifted, and it starts with me, it starts with you. So join host Eric Miller. He is a registered nurse of nearly 20 years and adjunct clinical instructor, and today's honored guest, me, Margie Cooke, and be ready to have your life uplifted so you can, in turn, uplift others. Welcome to the Feeding Our Young podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the B-side of the Margie Cooke experience, going back to my LP days. Thank you so much for just opening up about yourself in that first part, and in the second part, I'm excited to dive into your career. Before we do, there's a couple things that I want to ask still, because I loved your answers to the questions. And so 3 fluff questions, everybody. We're not spending half an episode on this, but we did talk about your family. We didn't talk about any potential fur babies. Do you have any pets?
Well, we've always had a dog. So I do have a lab dog right now, and her name is Nordy. I had one named Macy, and so she was Nordy, the Nordy girl. And so we just have her, and she's a good dog. I've had a horse for years. It started off in high school. I would ride horses with friends, and then when we got married, eventually we had land for a horse. So I've had a horse for quite some time. I've done some pretty exciting trips with the horse. And then, like the Chief Joseph ride, which is 1,300 miles. I just did a little portion of it, but it was through Yellowstone. And that was just super cool. And then I did the John Wayne ride across the state of Washington. And that started in Easton and ended in Tico. That was about 250 miles. And so I did those fun things with the horse those were like on my bucket list. And then I won some alpaca at an ag show. Well, that was the cheapest part of it, winning, because then you have to build the building and, the whole bit with the alpaca.
Yeah.
And I primarily use that fiber for crocheting, weaving, that type of thing. And so we don't have the alpaca anymore. But I still have the dog, still have the horse.
Oh, incredible. I just love it. It's not the typical, you know what I mean? Like, I don't remember the last person I talked to who had an alpaca, so I love it. This is kind of a combo question, but who or what inspires you or inspires you most in life?
Well, I am very inspired by people that don't have everything wonderful. They're physically challenged. Like a good example would be Helen Keller, where she overcame obstacles. I have friends that don't have, that had a stroke, but they keep on keeping on. I am so inspired by those people, or people that have had personal tragedy and they figure out a way to move forward and think forward, because it is so heart-wrenching and heartbreaking, and it can keep you stuck. So people that pull through the stuck part and come out the other side, even though they look back on it and they have grief, they're still moving forward. And I think those people really are just the coolest people around in my mind. So those people inspire me. So my favorite genre of books, because I know that's one of these questions, by far is nonfiction books. Yeah. By far. I'm not big on fiction books, but nonfiction, true stories about people I love.
And I love how you bring that up because, at least, you know what I mean, as far as talking about people who are stuck. I like that word. People who get stuck for a while, come out the other side of it. And you don't necessarily are victorious and overcome and, can claim this victory. Because like you said, there's still grief to be had in those moments of life. And, especially when you're reflecting back on it. But the fact that you're able to come through it and all the things, just absolutely incredible. And that's the old adage, right? The cliche, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And it really does. You can't come out of situations like that without being changed, either for the better or for the worse, but hopefully for the better. And that brings me to I'm going to totally ignore the third fluff question I was going to ask you, because that dives right into how you wanted to talk about what you love most about nursing. That dovetails right into that. So, what is it that you love most about nursing, Margie?
I love to see people get better when they come into any healthcare facility, anywhere, any place, and they are not at their optimum. And I think they're going to go through this, hopefully, go through their experience wherever I might be or other people might be. I can be the observer and be just as happy and see that person reach the other endpoint, and they are more of a human being. They might be missing parts at this point, but they can
Mm-hmm.
function. They're they're better than when they walked in the door. And I like to feel like nurses are that variable that get them from A to Z. Granted, you have the doctors, you have the physical therapist, but you have that comfort of a nurse who, through their skills, is really doing an awful lot for the patient. And I just think it's amazing field of practice. So that's probably what I love the most about nursing.
And that's obvious in everything that you say and do. I have an old adage, I tell people, of course, we do this because we need to put food on the table. If I didn't have four, kids now, teenagers, adults, young adults who eat us out of house and home, you know what I mean? Maybe I'd work a little less. But that's not why we do it. If you're doing it for the money, if you're doing it just for that reason, you will not survive, because there has to be something more. And it is those shifts that peds oncology, hematology oncology for me, that was an easy one when it comes to this, right? You get to see people. We'd have patients live on the unit for a month or two at a time, no immune system, and yet and you see them come in at their sickest without treatment. They are going to die, and you provide treatment, and you see their life extended, maybe even quality of life improved, and that is why we do what we do. The other thing I can compare it to is my postpartum experience. Vastly less. We don't have a lot of frequent flyers there. You have
Mhm.
patients that come in and in 20, they have a baby, and in 24 hours they're gone, out of your life, until maybe they have another baby and you happen to get to take care of them again. But in that regard, you still get to see a change, because you see people come in terrified, maybe having a baby for the first time, or terrified or upset or concerned because of, this particular circumstance that's going on with this particular pregnancy. And then they deliver, and maybe there were some challenges, like you said, maybe there was some things they would have to grieve about the birthing process, but they have this beautiful baby on the other side of it. And that's what nursing is about, is bettering the lives of others. We just happen to get to make a career out of it, and we get to happen to get paid for it. And so, speaking of getting paid, Margie,
Yes.
you've had a number of jobs in your lifetime so far. So briefly, tell us about the jobs you had before you became a nurse, and then let's start going down that road of your nursing career.
Well, when I was in high school, I got my first, well, I started to work in the food industry, and then I became a waitress and realized, aha, I get tips. So now I have money. And I didn't put it all together because I was 16 at the time, but this money enabled me to buy my first car, buy cute clothes. I had gone to a private school where you wore uniforms, and it's like, oh wow, I could go places, go to concerts that cost more. All of that money provides, I got with the waitress. So then, when it came to my career with the nursing world,
Mm-hmm.
we moved to Oregon, was our first place in the Northwest, and I had this nurse's aid certificate, so I worked in a little hospital there. And then I worked in a variety of small hospitals, probably 10-ish,
Okay.
where you did everything. You were the only RN. The person would walk in, if I don't get that IV in, that person's not going to get the IV they need. Then you would switch your hats. You'd have to scrub for surgery. You'd switch your hats. You'd have to be the trauma nurse. Then you'd have to deliver a baby. And then, so a lot was put on you as the only nurse, and your backup was an LPN and an aide. And, they were pretty darn amazing, this LPN and aide, but really the bottom line as the RN, you had all that responsibility. Well, I started thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to take classes for everything that's going to walk in the door because so
Hmm.
many varied things came in the door in a small town. So I became like a education junkie. I would take loads and loads of courses. Well, it eventually enabled me to work in critical care. I took so many courses. So I eventually worked in med surg coronary intensive care up in Coeur d'Alene at Kootenai. Loved it. I love the people I worked with. We all had certifications as our CCRN. We all were constantly getting certified like they do at Sacred Heart. You're just smaller hospitals, you don't have that certification process. I was doing it to myself, but now
Yeah.
I'm in a setting where there is real good accountability for your education and what you do to the patient. And I love that. I love to have somebody, if I can't get that IV in, I wasn't the only one. I could call on somebody else.
Yeah.
But you got pretty good at those IVs, but I started just learning how to do so many things. And so I really loved critical care because I felt like what I did was so pivotal in that setting for their recovery. There was many
Hmm.
times no doctor there. You would have parameters for various drugs. You'd have to know the rhythms. You'd have to know how to. I mean, I was ACLS certified. It went on and on. So then I got to a point. I was at a workshop, and lo and behold, there was a manager at Sacred Heart, and it was only 9 miles further for me to commute, which I had no idea. I didn't think about it. Now I
Hmm.
did. And we were sending patients from Kootenai to Sacred Heart. So I thought I wanted to have more difficult patients because now, I kept learning. So I got a job. That was when you can get a job pretty quick. I was sitting across the table from her and she said, apply. And I applied and boom, I got the job there.
Wow.
So I was working in critical care at Kootenai and at Sacred Heart. And I was finding I could work 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts. And I thought, as much as I love this, logically, I want to be with my family. That's what I got, became a nurse for. And I wanted to have a taste of nursing, but I didn't want it to be every day for long, long hours. And so then while I was at Kootenai, I also worked as a supervisor. There you could work in a department. And I don't know that many people did it, but I happened to do it. And so when a position at Sacred Heart came open for a supervisor, where I had this background at Kootenai, I could answer the questions.
Hmm.
And, as a supervisor, it's similar in different settings, but there are differences, but there's some similarities. So I could answer the questions pretty easily.
Yeah.
And I got the job as a supervisor. Well, I said,
Wow.
hey, I can do all this stuff. I'd be glad to help on the floor. I mean, it's no problem. I can hang blood. I can help out in codes. Well, that's not the way they like to do things there. They wanted you to be in management when you're in management. And,
Hmm.
I went all the way to the top on this subject, but it was, my peers weren't doing it. And that created, a problem. So I thought, okay, I will have to say goodbye to what I really loved
Hmm.
for the time as a supervisor. And because of all those experiences in small hospitals and at Kootenai, I was very comfortable going to all the departments because I knew a little bit about a lot of places.
Yeah.
And so it made it very comfortable for me in that role in that regard. Now, there was concern when I got the job. I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to last more than 5 months in this job? Because there's a lot of political stuff. And, when you're working in the patient department, you're dealing with your patients and
Hmm.
those peers. Then you get into a broader scope of managers, directors, CEOs, all of that. Then it's like, whoa, we're in another world here. So it was, in the role of the supervisor, I was getting called frequently, and I get it, to move the patients through the system because they were getting, especially during COVID, blocked up in the ER. And I
Yeah.
was there during the height of COVID. And so it's like, we got to get these patients on the floors, and the nurses can only do so much, And so it's that balance of not killing the staff with so much work, and
Yeah.
also not bogging down our ER with patients that are not ER patients anymore. So, I mean, we were overflowing in the ER with patients because we had so many COVID patients in the hospital at large. So it became, a balancing act. And I really enjoy staff. I loved my job, but I didn't like to push the staff so hard, but I was in a position that I had to.
Yeah.
So I'm getting called. The little do they know, they see me come in that unit. That's one unit. There is about 35 plus units there. You
Yes.
go into, and you're called constantly for troubleshooting. Well, my background really helped troubleshooting to be quite easy because I knew enough about what they were going through, and I felt their pain, the staff, when things were going south.
Hmm.
So if I didn't know the answer, I'd find the answer very quickly. And I felt like in my role, I wanted to be a resource, not just a person there. I really wanted to be that resource. If they needed something, they could call me. I might not be the answer, but I could find the answer, and I could find the staff to help me. So I
Yeah.
knew my key players in the hospital. I had some really strong staff, like when I worked night shift and things were going not well on a department, I'd call up my buddy from ICU. Hey, we need a pair of hands here. Can you, and knowledge, not a pair of hands, the whole gamut. We need you
Yeah.
to come
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
us. And, that was before they had the rapid response nurse. But even when we had the rapid response nurse, I needed extra help to make that department go smoothly during that crisis. So I really loved that part of the job because of knowing everybody, and I really liked all the staff.
Hmm.
I felt like there were, I heard stuff about the different staff members, they're, yeah, the comments like having 500 children, but I could keep it at bay. I could literally hear stuff that wasn't so favorable and deal with that person where they're at in my relationship. I did not let it affect my relationship with them, especially if they were the charge nurse. And so, I mean, it made for a very, in my mind, I loved that role. I know it's
Hmm.
not for everybody, but I did enjoy it.
Mm. I so many things to say. So many things competing to come out of my mouth. I mean, I just
Oh,
no. Let me back up for a second because I love we talk about like even just let's focus on a unit, an inpatient unit, right?
yes.
You start out as a bedside nurse and you do the bedside nurse thing, and you know what I mean. On my unit, that's 6 patients, right? If you're med surge, 5, 6 patients, I don't know, maybe ICU 2 max, hopefully. Peds oncology, we'd have 3, 4, sometimes 2, depending on acuity. But
Yeah.
that's your world. That is what you are overseeing. That is what you are trying to maintain and to manage and to provide the best care for. And then you've there, hopefully a year or two, but in this modern day, probably about a few months. And they're like, hey, you're ready to be charge nurse. Come on over. So that you get trained to be charge. And now you're overseeing the whole unit. Peds oncology, that was 16 patients total. That you're kind of overseeing. You're overseeing the staff. You're trying to help make sure everything runs smoothly. Troubleshooting, things of that nature. And then, in postpartum, we just had 43 patients a few days ago as charged,
Wow.
you're, again, you're overseeing these 43 patients, the number of nurses it takes to get, and you're trying to do everything you can to support every single person, serving, you know what I mean, kind of that servant leadership. And then, Margie, you're then taking it to the next level, right? You're talking about being a house supervisor. And in our hospital that we're referring to that she was at, Sacred Heart, I can't speak for Kootenai, Sacred Heart 600 plus bed hospital. You said it's like having 500 children. You're doing this same principle, right? But you're overseeing all the units and all the charge nurses and all the nurses under their care and all the patients, and you're trying to make this run as smoothly as possible. Like you said, it's having that top-down view, not from a position of power, but from I have to kind of, okay, yes, I understand your issue right now with your patient load, nurse A, But you're also looking at, we've got a bottleneck happening in the ER. We've got to get these patients to this floor. We got to figure out how to make this happen, and making all these puzzle pieces fit when sometimes they don't want to fit whatsoever. So I
Yes.
appreciate that perspective. But even more importantly, everybody, listen to what she said, right? You go in and you're like, yeah, there's politics. There's politics anywhere you go. It doesn't matter what you do. You try and avoid it. My personal thing is, I don't like, I don't know. I just don't subscribe to them. Sometimes they've impacted my life. Sadly, they'll still impact your life, even when you try to avoid them or not necessarily be part of them. But like you said, people are coming to you, and it's just like it harkens back to what you said about that dean. You know what I mean? Like, oh, so and so, this charge nurse, I don't, blah blah blah, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna take that to note, and now I'm gonna go and treat this person, you know what I mean, on a totally, like, and not allowing that to impact your personal relationship with that person. Yeah, and so that inspires me to hear you say that. That is something I've espoused for a long period of time, and it's not easy to do. So here's a random thought. Someone's listening to you say this, and they're like, okay, Margie, so maybe you find out this person is not all they're cracked up to be, or they're, kind of, I mean, they're just rude, they're plain, they're whatever. How do you personally, like you just said, I try to not allow this to affect your relationship with that person. How do you practically do that?
Well, okay, on practical purposes, let's say I knew I will try to reason with the person. It depends on who it is. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if it is, I've had experiences where it would be a charge nurse very rude to the staff. And I mean, to a point, it was just like out of control. Well, I try to go
Mm.
to her, the upline. I tried to talk to her first. Then
Mm-hmm.
I tried to talk to the upline. And then I thought, this isn't working. So I just went right for it. And I said specifically to the person, I've tried to deal with this with you, and I will give examples of what you're doing. And of course, they will say, well, I didn't know I was doing it. I said, I know you're doing it because you're smart enough to know that. And it's impacting these different departments for staff that float there. If you're
Yeah,
being rude to them, if you're saying things that are hurtful, it impacts the care they're giving to their patients. I'm getting calls about it. I'm trying to have things run smoothly. Well, this particular person, which I had to hand it to her, she had an evaluation, and this is one of these self-evaluations where you have peers. She asked me to evaluate her, and I thought, whoa, that takes guts. And I thought, and I had noticed such an improvement with her.
yeah,
So I really did notice great improvement. So I did do the evaluation fairly. I said, I've seen great improvement. And she was super smart, which I loved. She's a smart person. And she was good with her patient care, but it was the ethical part that was difficult for her. But she turned that around, and we actually respected each other. And I think when you talk to somebody directly and try to be, it's hard because it's to tell somebody something that directly, it is hard. You are hurting their feelings. You are saying things that they don't want to hear. Uh, and they might not believe what you're saying because their self perception is different. I mean, I wait till I have a lot of ammunition before I really go to that point. It's like, okay, I'm done. And then I
and
will.
by ammunition you mean evidence, right?
Yeah, evidence,
Yeah, yeah.
evidence. And so it's like, okay, I've got enough here to say something because nothing else was working. And now I'm with that person. And so often there's no management around when I'm working. On
Mm.
when it was evenings and night shift, I was it. So
Yep.
I would get calls. Now, I had a situation one time where a staff nurse was making the charge nurse's life very difficult,
Mm.
wasn't listening to anything the charge nurse asked. I and I heard about it. I can only hear this stuff so long. So I went to that department and I took her aside and I said, you know, if this doesn't stop now, you're going to have to go home. Just point blank. Even if it made the hospital tight, we just could not have her
Yeah.
dealing with the charge. It was so disruptive to her. And the charge was, she couldn't function in her role as the charge because this person was rude and obnoxious, not doing what she asked. I said, you might not like who's in charge, but you're in a role as a staff nurse. And what she is asking of you is a common practice.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do the assignment. If you're refusing the assignment, that's a whole different pathway we can
Yeah,
go down. But
yeah.
if you're willing to take do it with as happy a heart as you can,
Mm-hmm.
because we got to make it through this shift. So And the person turned around during the shift. She was so startled to see me. Uh-oh, what happened? But it was like, so, I've had those things. I've had times where people are not in charge and they call me and act like they're in charge. Drives me
Mm,
crazy. And I will think, I don't think that person's in charge. And then I will say, we have a chain of command. Once I figure out they're not in charge, because they sound like they are at first.
yeah.
And I said, we have somebody in charge. I have to go through everything I do or discuss. I appreciate you telling me what you're telling me, but go to the charge. And I take my direction from the charge because of that chain of command. It's too undermining to
Yeah.
everybody if you don't go through the chain of command. So I kept that kind of framework of the ways I did things, and I always try to follow our policies and procedures as best I could. Sometimes things can get tweaked, some things don't make sense, but overall, we have a framework to live in, and I tried to go with that framework. That
Hmm.
way, I kind of kept my role clean if I had to answer to somebody, and generally I do. I mean, a
Yeah.
manager or director will come after me and ask me questions. What happened here? Why are we having all these patients stuck in the ER? And I'd have to say, and I had to turn patients away from the hospital too.
Mm,
But, and then one day I was out to lunch with this group of nurses, and one nurse says, "Oh, I remember an experience with you, Margie." And I thought, oh gosh, what? Because there could have been 100 million experiences. And she said, "Well, you came up to the floor because the charge said you're going to have to talk to her. She won't take any more patients. She only had like two on a med
mm.
surge floor." So I said, okay. And I was really had all these patients in here. So I went up there and I went and talked to her. And she said, "I can't take any more. And for all these reasons." I said, "Well, that makes complete logical sense. The acuity is too high for the patients you have. We're not going to give you any more patients."
There you
But
go.
I kind of wish the charge nurse had said that, but instead, but maybe it was more effective. He said, "Come and talk to her." And I said, "Okay." And so that was a good one. I
Yeah.
didn't know what she was going to say to me. It could have been anything. But in that case, it turned out to be a pretty decent response. And she was glad that I talked to
Yeah.
her and she didn't get any more patients.
Yeah. And you bring up an important point, right? Like that we're doing this. You said I like how you phrased with as happy of a heart as you can. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
I mean really just respectfully, right? Like that's the idea. It's like, hey, and what this is all illustrating in my brain is kind of a system of checks and balances, right? You said, you're there as the next resource up if somebody's not being listened to. But you also, in that role, even though you have this top down view of this whole place, you still have your accountability to the other managers and the other supervisors and things of that nature. So I love that when not abused, that this system of checks and balances exists, because without it you can have people run amok and do whatever they want and treat people
Mm.
poorly and all that. So this, I feel like, segues very naturally and beautifully into one of the main reasons why you wanted to be on the podcast. So I'll just ask the question the way I ask it, and you answer it how you wish to answer it. I know you've kind of touched on it already, but
Okay.
I do like to ask people the challenges that they've faced in life, personally and professionally. Right now, let's stick with the professional side of things. What challenges have you faced there, and how have you navigated those challenges?
Okay. I will say professionally, from probably early on, pretty early on, I noticed people sabotaging one another, hurtful to one another. And it really bothered me because we're supposed to be caring for people and we're not caring for each other. And it happened to me. It's happened probably more to others, but it still bothers me when I saw it or I heard about it. I thought, that's not the right way to be. And so I had to figure, and sometimes even figuring out what's going on, the backstory takes a while to figure that out. Basically the politics of it. You can get on a department and not know who doesn't like who and who wanted whose job and all that garbage.
Yeah.
But you're going to be affected by it when you become that nurse on that floor to some extent. So kind of the more um, it helps in that regard. The more it's like you're going through a landmine of bombs and
Mm-hmm.
your landfill. You want to do it as effectively and as professionally and as smart as you can. So I started to learn early on that I had to learn more because there's power in knowledge. And the people that learned more and knew more had that position that they could help their fellow person better. It's those nurses that knew more that were not good to one another, that they
Mm.
had a bad home life, or they didn't get that job promotion, or they were just irritated with the way the floor is running. And so instead of being that helpful person, they are talking about each other, mean to each other. But I
Mm-hmm.
knew enough that the more knowledge I had, I could be that professional to help the other person. And I think the ones that, the more you know, you're not as inclined really to hurt each other because there's a certain confidence level in knowing more. So if you
Mm-hmm.
don't know a lot, you can be unkind too
Mm-hmm.
because you just don't know what you're doing. So you're unkind to the people around you. You're running a department, you don't even know what ends up. So if you know more, even as a charge nurse, as a staff nurse, as a manager, as a director, the more you know, the better you can run that department, that floor, that patient effectively. So that's why I believe in certifications. I think it's great.
Mm.
If you can get certified, you're going to be a stronger nurse. So I would say that, and so what did not prepare me when I was in high school, I had loads of friends. Did not have
Hmm.
any, I didn't see the cattiness that you do see.
Yeah.
And, you kind of live Pollyannish. You kind of get out, that was an easy piece of cake. Had a boyfriend who is my husband at this point. He's a great guy. I mean, I didn't have that stuff. And then I
Yep.
was working and studying all the time. I get into the work world and it's like, whoa, people will say things that aren't even true about one another. And I thought, no, I was like a babe in the woods to that stuff until
Mm-hmm.
I started to learn more and be wiser at interpersonal dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Very well said, and I appreciate that advice because and you're taking it too. I'll add 2 cents to this if they're worth anything, but you talk about knowledge also from a standpoint of certification, science. You know what I mean? That actual practical knowledge that helps you in your job, and then you also alluded to the knowledge of interpersonal relationships. And the more you can study in that area, there's a lot of different books, a lot of different podcasts, a lot of different anything you can do to kind of be better in that regards too. But also then it becomes just a matter of life knowledge also and experience. And there is a level to be said of, I'm looking back at myself when I first started as a nurse, and I'm not close to 50 years. You know what I mean? I'm almost 20 and I'm so excited. But that being said, even 20 years ago, I was very ignorant in the way of many things. And, you know what I mean? And at that point, I'm a 30-year-old quote unquote man. And so there's things you have to learn along the way that just pain is a great teacher, right? Experience is a great teacher. And so I guess the theme in all of that, regardless of what the knowledge is that you're trying to glean, be open to that knowledge, be open to understanding new ways of doing things and new ways of seeing the world, whether it's because of an experience or because of some, certification you chased or new knowledge in that regard. So I thank you so much because I know that is one of the things that's nearest and dearest to your heart. Since we're on the subject, if you want to talk about it, what other challenges have you faced, either professionally and or personally, on that level, and how have you navigated those?
Okay, so I would say personally, practically my entire first family has died. I
Mm-hmm.
have one brother left. We were a family of seven, and some died quite young, some of it through their own choices. And I have one brother left that they don't really have a clear diagnosis of it, but he is in an extended care facility. So it's like a
Mm.
neurological condition that they think might have happened from being in the service. At any rate, so it's like I could be so bugged. The first one I heard about dying was my brother when he was 35. And I was like, what? He- He's not alive anymore? I mean, it was so shocking because he was full of
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
And so, what I did to combat that, if you want to say, is I put so much of my mind, my heart, my soul into my present family, which is
Hmm.
26 people. So my downline is huge.
Yeah.
And, I try to go to their different events and be there for them. And when they call, I'm here for them. And I really enjoy it too. But it's like God gave me that grace to help me live through the people that I loved no longer alive anymore. And it worked for me to have that which I could put myself into. And of course, I like to put myself into human beings. Well, the human beings are my family and even
Hmm.
friends. I've spent, especially since I am retired active, but I have more time than I have for friends too. And so I listen more, I hear more. Their husband died. I can be that person for them. So that has helped me personally. That's probably the biggest personal challenge is the death of my family,
Yeah.
first family. And
Yeah.
luckily, I've been married to an amazing husband, a really amazing husband. And that has been a great piece to me.
Hmm. I thank you for opening up to that. If you don't mind, sometimes you never ask a woman her weight. You never ask a woman what I'm about to ask you, and that is if you want.
Oh,
How many years wise are you, Margie?
oh, I am 70 years old. I just
S-
turned 70. So I have been,
Congratulations.
thank you. I've been celebrating since January and I just turned it about a week ago. So I don't mind talking about age. And
I.
my girlfriend who celebrates every year with me, I forget her age. She just turned
Mhm.
100 and she's so with the program, so with it. I just
Oh
like,
my goodness.
and I forget, like I said, I forget she's 100. I go, oh my gosh, you are now 100. And now we're really celebrating 100 years. But she lives on her own. She can talk about everything. And I think, oh my
Oh.
gosh, I love having friends all different ages.
Yeah, different perspectives for sure. And the reason why I ask and the reason why I bring it up, first of all, I love the fact that I guess maybe when you're younger, you have a birthday. And then as you get older, you have a birth week. And now everybody's like
Yes,
claiming birth month. I'm like, if you make it to 70, yeah, you can claim birth year. That sounds great. Just celebrate it all year long. Um,
I
but I
really have.
love that. And I love that is, but I mean, you got to celebrate life, right? And the reason
Right.
why I asked that though is because, and I appreciate you being open, and why I asked that even after we discussed the professional stuff, because I'm finding myself, you know what I mean, 49 now, going to be 50 here in a few months, and I'm, the reason why I asked you this and your age in particular, and this
Yes.
kind of personal, etc., is I'm experiencing these things that you're talking about, you know what I mean, where family members who you love and who are dear to you or who have played a major role in your life are no longer there. And for me, fortunately, my siblings are all still alive. I haven't reached that point yet. But both my father and my mother have both died, within the last 5, 6 years, give or take. And my beloved grandmother, who I love to pieces, she was the last grandparent who was living. She had died a few years ago, all within a relative, 5, 6 year period. And you start to see that what they say, right, as you get older, you see why people get bitter as they get older, because they either get stuck in the past, or they're the ones that they have put all this time and energy to have died, and that can include children as well, whether they're adult or young children. I've sadly
Mhm.
experienced that. And having this, it's a sense of loneliness. You get to, there's someone there that you either interacted with or you could rely on, or who is super close to you, who is no longer part of your life, and it's very hard to navigate that. And so I appreciate, Margie, your perspective now 20 years ahead of me, you know what I mean, and being
Yes.
able to say, here's how I've combated this. So anyone listening, I don't care if you're in your 20s, I don't care if you're 30s, 40s, whatever, it's coming. Life does come. Life. The only thing
Yes.
guaranteed in life is what? Death and taxes. And so, your loved ones will die, assuming you continue to live. Not trying to get all morbid on Margie's episode, but the idea is that some of us deal with it by ignoring it. Some people deal with that fact, and I'm not saying you need to turn around and obsess over it, but just know that every day we have on this earth is such a gift. And we're never guaranteed tomorrow. We assume tomorrow, I got plans tomorrow. You've got plans tomorrow, and we may not get tomorrow, and we may not know why. Or your loved one may not get there tomorrow. So please, 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 first of all, love the ones that are in your life always take this moment and just shoot a text. Get them a phone call, even better. Let them hear your voice. Hey, I love you. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so grateful that you are still breathing. And they'll be like, "What the heck are you doing? What's wrong with you?" But it is taking advantage of every moment that we have, right, Margie?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, yeah. So Margie, I don't want to. I could talk forever with you. Is there anything you wanted to make sure that you chatted about that we have not covered in your beautiful two-part session here?
No, I feel like we covered it, and I hope people learn strategies to be kinder, to be more fortitude, and be that person. Be that person that you want to be, and be the way you want to be treated. More importantly, you might be bitter, but you can always change. If you cannot get over your bitterness, you can change your department. You can go into another avenue of nursing, and
Mm-hmm.
all your love will be rekindled. So, if you can make it work where you're at, great. But if you can't, there's other places. And, it brings out the best in you when you change sometimes.
Yes, yes, it does. Yes, it does. And you discover parts of yourself you never knew might have existed. So, all
Yep.
right. So, Margie, before we close, we'll just give the traditional closing questions. You had chosen 3 words to describe nursing school. We talked about those way back when. Remind us, what were they and why did you pick them?
Okay. The first one was interesting. And the reason I picked that, human beings are so multifaceted, and we live in the human race. Their body, mind, soul are truly unique and fascinating. I love the little bodies and all the way to the decrepit bodies and the ones that are quite elderly. So that's why I felt interesting, because they really fascinate me. And then that leads into fascinating. And what disease process do they face? What family are they in? What socioeconomic conditions do they face? And then it leads right into thought provoking. What culture does this person live in that affects their response to the world? How does their religious beliefs affect them? And I really feel like, you know, God is so merciful that we don't have to worry about who's going to heaven, who's not going. It's in God's hands. But if we can just love one another, which is the thing that Jesus promotes, and love God, it will carry us through a long way, and it's very freeing. You can be more to one another when you don't worry about judging them so much. And so I would say that is that. There is one more question I see, but I'll wait to.
It's almost like you know where I'm going. No, you've given so much wonderful. I've loved hearing about your career. I've loved the advice you've given along the way. But if you could give one piece of advice for people to remember, what is that one piece?
Okay, when it comes to nursing school, I would say you're going to have to study. You can't get through without good grades. So, it does take dedication and time in. So, let's say you don't get into that nursing program. What can you do strategically to help you get in later? You can be a CNA, you can be a medical tech, you can be an LPN, you can be an ADN, which
Mm-hmm.
you're taking the same state boards as those with bachelors. Now you could say, well, that's good enough. Well, that's true. It's all good
Mm-hmm.
enough.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to stay in the nursing world, they want you to get a BSN most places. So once you're an RN, that's a great segue into getting your BSN. You can take courses and get into that program pretty readily as an RN already. And that's what most healthcare facilities want. So all of it's good all the way up, but that's a strategy. Don't give up, and think of what avenue can I strategically take if there's a door blocked, here. What window can I open? There's another door blocked. What window can I open? And there's lots of windows you can open. There's lots of areas you can go into. Being a
Yeah.
CNA is wonderful. That's what I loved about the CNAs at Sacred Heart. They work hard, they do hard, they're perfect. So all those roles are important, and embrace them.
Yeah, and absolutely necessary. And I just love that again, it's all about opening those windows, opening those doors. If you're happy where you're at, fantastic. Enjoy your role, maximize it. Be the best version of you that you can be in that role. If you start to hunger for more, or conversely, you start to feel yourself getting cynical and you want to change things up, man, there's always those other opportunities. So open those doors, make it happen. You're never too old to start fresh. That's proven to me time and time again. I'm going to stop talking. This was supposed to be your last word, and here I am blathering on. Margie, thank you so much for taking time this morning, for reaching out and being a part of this, and for, I guess, helping us pull the wool over the eyes of your daughter.
Thank you, Eric. It's been fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Margie. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Here's what's happening on the next episode of Feeding Our Young.
I love learning, and I feel like every new job, like I was also nurse tech, so I technically had 3 jobs while I was in school, because like there's an opportunity, and I know I'm going to get something amazing out of it. I know I'm going to meet people, and I have a hard time. It made me think back, because getting for my youngest daughter, she's a junior in high school, but they're sending out stuff for the seniors, and it made me think of like they vote, people, whatever they vote on. I was most involved. That was what I was voted, because I can't I wasn't like every club. I just have a hard time sticking to one thing, because there's so much in life, and I just feel like I want to grab as many opportunities as possible.
Did you like today's episode of Feeding Our Young? Want to know more about the Feeding Our Young movement? Check out our website at feedingouryoung.org. Would you like to be featured on a future episode? Maybe have Eric bring his unique brand of encouragement to your nursing students or nurses? Please text us at 509-666-5636 or email us at info@feedingouryoung.org. We're so excited to have you return to hear our next honored guest. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Feeding Our Young LLC. Again, that's username Feeding Our Young LLC. Until next time, be encouraged and go find someone to encourage today.